which is the panel on cricket with Osman Samiuddin. Anyone who loves cricket or is even vaguely interested in it, cricket in Pakistan, knows Usman's work. For 6 years, he was Cricinfo's Pakistan editor. Now he writes for The National. And he is one of those writers who I started reading first for his analysis of cricket, and after a while you realize what you're also getting is an analysis of Pakistan. And we are finally going to get what many of us have been waiting a long time for, which is the book on Pakistan cricket from Osman Samiuddin, which will be published in November.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. So, but it doesn't have a title, so he's open to any suggestions.
Yeah, please throw them my way. Thank you very much for coming. Shocked and surprised.
Shocked and surprised. I'm just going to jump right into it. Usman, I spent a lot of time in the last few years. I was writing a novel. I was looking at a lot of photographs of colonial era, what's now Pakistan. And at a certain point, what struck me was I had seen no pictures of people, Desis, playing cricket. And I found myself asking the question, when did cricket become the national obsession, and how did it happen?
Oh, I should read my book out at some point right now. It's Pakistan at least. You kind of had an infrastructure left over from after partition. There was an infrastructure from India, so you had domestic tournaments happening in Pakistan. Even then, I think there were like several kind of moments when it started becoming big. So the first was obviously Pakistan's win at the Oval here against England in 1954, which was something that nobody, I think, expected, least of all any of the Pakistan players, if you read kind of their accounts. And one of the best things about that win was that so people had been kind of following it, very vaguely kind of following it in tea stalls, chai walas, and on chalkboards and stuff. And on the last day of the match, when people realized that Pakistan can win this, Pakistan somehow they managed to get BBC to broadcast that last session live. They relayed it through to Pakistan, so a lot of people kind of tuned in. Usually what they would do was they would miss that morning session, BBC, so they would tune in sort of in the afternoon session. But for that day, they tuned in for the morning, and that kind of just sent shockwaves throughout the country when they won that. But I think the real kind of watershed moment was, so cricket had been kind of building up, it had been spreading out in the country throughout the 50s and 60s. And I think the real watershed moment was in the late 70s when India came over, after a gap of 18 years, the two sides played. That was 77, end of 77, 78, India came over. And TV was becoming big in Pakistan then. PTV had been around for about 10 years. And Imran Khan was on the scene, and he was looking pretty good. And Pakistan had some great guys who had great hair, and all really good-looking guys, and they beat India. And Ziaul Haq had just come in.
Hair is important, right?
Hair, as we will see, is very, very important for a Pakistani player. Yeah. So Ziaul Haq had just come in. This is a funny thing, actually. Ziaul Haq had just come in. I say come in, as he came in very politely and said, excuse me, but
he came out to bat.
Can I take your place, please?
The
Thanks
wicket fell.
So he'd come in, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with Javed Jabbar, who's a real old-time media professional in Pakistan, and he says that this happened. Ziaul Haq needed something to kind of keep people quiet. He needed like a nasha, kind of an addiction for them to kind of get into and not worry about the fact that he's a military dictator. So he actually pushed for cricket to be on TV so that people could sit at home and watch TV for 5 days and not go out on the streets and say, hey, you're a dictator, get out of our country and stuff. So, around that time, with the combination of these factors, Zia being there, Imran looking good and stuff, and Pakistan actually winning, and PTV being there, I think the thing kind of just blew up from late 78, I would say.
This is the most disturbing thing I've ever heard in my life, which is that you're actually telling us we need to be grateful to Ziaul Haq for something, which is for bringing cricket deeper into all our lives.
I don't think anyone has heard any good thing about Ziaul Haq ever, but this was the one thing. He thought, I need to keep these people quiet. I need for them to forget the fact that I'm an army dictator, so here we go. And here's some cricket handy. We can't watch songs on TV. We can't make music, so we might as well watch some cricket. And it just, as it just took off from there completely.
Well, you use that term of nasha. There's a fantastic essay you did about the hal of cricket. And could you just talk a little about that and what you meant by it and what particular kind of Pakistani passion for cricket signifies?
Yeah, it was a strange thing. This is something that it had been in my head from like when I was a young guy watching specifically Pakistan. And I think any of you guys who watch Pakistan out here, there comes a time when you're all moaning about them and swearing at them, and they're just playing this horrendous cricket like they don't care, and they're just like kind of going through the motions, and suddenly something happens. And you're just like, hey, what? I was watching something. What's going on here? And like in the next 5-10 minutes, they've like decimated the opposition, and they've done it beautifully. And nobody knows what the hell is going on. You're kind of sitting there, saying, what went on there? And they won the match. And it's happened so many times, that I started thinking of it as just like the regular way that Pakistan play. And then I realized, I think it might have been my wife who mentioned, maybe it's worth writing a piece on this. And so I started talking to some cricketers about this. I spoke to Waqar Yunus, who was great about this. Waqar Yunus used to speak about what used to happen when, say South Africa needed 45 runs from 15 overs, and they had 8 wickets in hand, and 1 wicket would fall, and then Waqar says, that we would just feel it. We would feel that something is up in the air here. And they would know that they had an old ball, which maybe or maybe not had been tampered, and they could get some reverse swing going. And he used to say that we can feel this. We know something's up, and they used to literally drag the ball away from the captain and just run through them. And he spoke really vividly about this. Then I spoke to some other guys, and they all kind of knew that they kind of sensed something happening and something coming together. And then I was writing this piece, and then I kind of realized, at least for me, I'm very musically inclined. I love any kind of music, not necessarily Pakistani music, but I love a lot of music. And I started speaking to different people from sort of different areas of life, and it came to me that listening to some Pakistani songs and maybe Qawwali is kind of like what Pakistan do on the cricket field, where you're kind of meandering and you're kind of losing interest in the whole thing, and it's just a song going on. You're like, yeah, it's just noise, and you're not watching it, and suddenly it clicks, and you're just like, oh my God, and the song, this Qawwali just takes off, and it really gets you somewhere deep inside. And I thought that this is what happens with Pakistan cricket, so I kind of wrote this piece calling it, and the word, the hal of Pakistan, it's like a state of mind of what they do. And so this piece kind of came out from that. And that's now what I kind of think, when I watch Pakistan, I try and do it sometimes. I turn the music on when they're losing, and I kind of hope that, we've got the music on. They might do something now, And of course, they never do because they're Pakistan, but, you can live in hope, I think.
You had one of my favorite lines about Pakistan ever was from that essay where you wrote, only when Pakistan realize that they are on the verge of losing the game do they begin to do something about not losing it. Which I thought, maybe we should go into Pakistan and say, actually, this is a country which has, 9 days left, fix it.
Well, you kind
if the spirit of cricket...
The whole country, I think, lives on that kind of jelly wobble, doesn't it? It's like, we're just 2 days from falling apart, so we somehow keep it together. And it never does fall apart. It's kind of like Pakistan. We're 2 days from not being Pakistan cricket, and kind of just carries on and goes on and goes on. It's not an easy way to kind of live and follow stuff around, but, it's the way it is.
It's slightly mad.
Drives us mad, that's for sure. That drives the whole country mad.
Well, on the subject of being driven mad, Shahid Afridi. Right. You've spoken brilliantly about why Shahid Afridi is such a fine hero for Pakistan. And actually, when I read that essay, I would, if you said to me, who is your favorite cricketer now, I would say, of course, Saeed Ajmal, because that's what you should say. But really deep down inside, it's really Shahid Afridi, and you feel a little bit guilty about it and bad and wrong. And so could you speak about why Shahid Afridi is such a particularly, apt hero for the nation?
I'd written that, Pakistan, that Afridi, I was actually, as we always do, I was writing a piece on Sachin Tendulkar, as you do. And
well, let's start with this. Maybe not everyone in here. Maybe some wandered in for art and have just stayed around. How would you sort of sum up Shahid Afridi for a relatively unknowing audience?
Oh, geez, man. He's like, I know nothing of art, but if you took a lot of colors and you threw them on a canvas somewhere in the world, generally it doesn't have to be in front of you, it has to be somewhere around you, and what you might end up with is something approaching Shahid Afridi generally, either as a cricketer or as a kind of icon or whatever. That might be somewhere where we get with Afridi, I think.
So now everyone's really clear on that.
Just so everyone is clear exactly what Afridi is.
Right.
No, I'd actually started writing this piece about Sachin Tendulkar, and the point of the piece was that I don't think you can have a hero like Sachin in Pakistan. And I know Sachin. There's plenty of people in India who question Sachin as well, but I don't think that the kind of farewell that he got, if you guys remember just last year, the kind of farewell that Sachin got in Mumbai, It was just, it was something I think I can imagine of no figure ever in Pakistan getting that. And so I wrote this piece and I said, Afridi is a very Pakistani kind of hero. But then I've been thinking about this since we had this kind of brief email discussion. And I think Afridi is actually just a very modern hero in the sense that to about half the population, he's actually a villain. Mm-hmm. He's like this sort of hero, anti-hero kind of guy. And, if for the people who know Afridi here, if you asked them, what you think of him, you'd probably get a fairly even split of people who hate him, can't stand him, think he's the death of cricket, think he's the death of Pakistan, think he should be kicked out, sent to India or wherever, and there'll be other people. Hands,
how many people here love Shahid Afridi?
That's Andy Bull over there, I can see saying that.
That's quite a lot. How many of you think really not disgrace?
There's actually more hands, people are not putting them up, but I'm sure there's...
They're afraid of the Shahid Afridi lovers who will just, including me,
about a rough split.
Yeah.
The thing I love about Afridi is that he's actually much, much smarter than he makes himself out to be. Smarter, I don't mean it in a good way, I mean in the chalu way.
Right.
So that he just knows a bit too much and he thinks very highly of himself. He's very chalu, if you can kind of get that word. But he just doesn't care. He just does not care what people think of him, what people think of the way he plays. And he keeps saying it every time. Every time you speak to him, and he's got these answers rehearsed to all media queries. Any question you ask him, did you feel any pressure on you? No, I play every match as if it was my first or last match. Everything. He just says, I play as if it's my first or last match. And you kind of think that if this is the way this guy thinks, that every match is either his first or his last match, just imagine the kind of pressure that he's kind of tries to put himself under every time. This is the first or last book you're ever going to write. You're kind of thinking, oh my God, I have to do something. And it kind of comes out. I always think
it's the last book.
It kind of comes out in the way he then plays. He goes out there and I love it about him, but because I'm a journalist and I kind of know how he operates and he is an operator, I'm a bit cynical of him as well. But, Saad Shafqat, who's another great writer from Pakistan, he says he went to some far-flung area in Pakistan, like in the north somewhere, where he thought that there was no TV there, nothing at all. But he saw these kids playing, and they all wanted to be Afridi and stuff, and they all had Afridi shirts, and they didn't know any other cricketer apart from Afridi and stuff. So he's obviously got that kind of he's Pathan, he's also a Karachiite, and that's like some deadly combo completely. For Karachi and your Pathan, you're like, hello, just steer clear of that person right there, So that's why he's kind of, and people from Karachi or Pathans will know, what I'm kind of getting at. So
I did last year, I was interviewing Malala Yousafzai, and I said, who's your favorite cricketer? And she looked at me with the stupidest question. She said, Afridi, of course.
Who else can it be?
I said,
and he has great hair.
And he has great hair. Let's do the hair. I have a theory, which I think many people have, that Pakistani fast bowlers, it's like Samson and his hair. Like there is a strength that comes from that long flowing hair. There's something about the wind in those locks as you're doing the run-up, which, I think the real secret of why does Pakistan have
hair
these...
flowing as you run in.
Yeah, there's something, and I'm very disturbed that the long hair...
It's gone.
It's gone. Do you think this is having a serious
effect? Well,
the
hair and Pakistani fast bowlers have a long old... Fazal Mahmood was probably the first guy who was on... Sorry, I just have to wave at my daughter. She's right. Fazal Mahmood was, I think, the first Pakistani to be put in a Brill cream ad.
Really?
Yeah, back in like 1951 or something. And he had great hair, wavy, sort of lots of it, Superman curl down the front. And I think since then, the theory has developed that if you want to be a fast bowler, it doesn't matter how you bowl, doesn't matter how you look, doesn't matter what arm you bowl with, as long as you have a great stock of hair.
Yeah.
So we had Imran Khan, Wasim Akram, Muhammad Amir, I think, was the last true kind of inheritor of great floppy, straight. I mean, these guys, it's sick. These guys, I don't have any hair. And when it grows long, it's very bad. It's wavy and curly and messy.
I have a better chance of being a great fast bowler.
You do, because you have great
Usman.
silky hair.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Usman.
That's right. And, these guys, it's just, I think the only guy who had bad hair but was a great fast bowler was Waqar Yunus. Waqar Yunus had pretty much like
he tried, the early days, there was that attempt
he had this
to
afro.
long,
he had this kind of unintentional afro coming out.
Yeah, he tried to do the long hair.
Kind of McEnroe afro kind of mix. Yeah. And it never really worked with him, but Wasim sorted out his hair very quickly. He had really bad mullet. Yeah. Abdul Qadir is, I think, the only non-fast bowler who's sort of looked after his hair, and he has like one hairstyle for every ball of the over that he bowls. So he kind of comes and bowls a leg break, he's got sort of side parting this way, and bowls another one, he's got like a middle parting and stuff.
Well, he had to come into a team when it was all about fast bowlers, right? I mean, he had to sort of,
Well, he had. I mean, the
Yes.
thing about Abdul Qadir was
We're
that
trying
he
to
had
make this a serious I don't know.
Well, we're trying, but
we're
it's not
trying.
going to
We're
work.
not really going to
And
be
the thing
far
about
with
him was that he had this kind of attitude, didn't he? That, you know,
Yeah.
I think Imran kind of pushed him to have this attitude. And the thing, Imran, I was surprised actually, and we'll get to this at some point as well, but I was surprised Imran had this brilliant piece of advice for Abdul Qadir when he first went to England, when he first came here in 1982. So he knew that Abdul Qadir was like this leg spin bowler, and there hadn't been a good leg spin bowler for a long time in the world, and that he was going to have this element of surprise. So he told, and he had this great run-up, of course. If anyone's seen Abdul Qadir, he used to come in from an angle, and he used to be hopping and skipping, and he had his hair sort of bouncing around everywhere. And you're like, you know, half the battle's won, and he's not even coming to bowl. And that drama and stuff, you know. And Imran said to him that, listen, you know, Qadir, I think you need to do one thing to really get on these Englishmen's nerves and their minds. He's like, what should I do? He said, grow a goatee. Because you're going to look like this kind of wizard, Eastern, you know, one of those really stereotyped Eastern-type wazirs who come into your ear and whisper things like, oh, I'm going to, you know, going to do bad things to you and stuff. So he got him to grow a goatee, and Abdul Qadir came here, and sure enough, like all beautiful stories about Abdul Qadir being this wizard of the East and this magician coming out. And Imran Khan
Had
did it.
great
Imran
strategic
Khan.
thinking, it
Spin
appears.
doctor. Imran Khan, the greatest spin doctor ever, never to have lived. In fact.
What effect does it have on a team and on the economy of cricket when that team is in exile?
Oh God, yeah, it's been massive.
How many years has it been now since there was?
It's been 5 years in March
Yeah.
since they've played a match in Pakistan, you know, and it's. I was speaking to some officials in the PCB. Sorry, I'm trying to get a little bit serious now. I'm trying to remember, but this he gave me an example of Hertz, the rent-a-car place in Pakistan, and so whenever teams used to come, Hertz used to be booked out completely because they needed vans, they needed buses and everything, and you know, so once cricket stopped, it turned out that Hertz basically almost shut up shop in Pakistan completely because you know their business just went down the drain. PC, Pearl Continental Hotel in Lahore, used to actually finance their renovations based on the PCB's cricket calendar. So they would work out which teams are coming, which tourists would come, you know, and they would base their finances around that. So the economy of the game in Pakistan has been hit. But the flip side, it's not as bad as a lot of people think, you know, because Pakistan now play in the UAE. And they make money from gate attendance, which, you know, they never used to make in Pakistan. You know, ticket... First of all, in Pakistan, nobody pays for a ticket. You know, you've got to know someone who knows someone who knows someone else who'll get you a VIP box pass, and you just sit there and you're like, oh yeah, I never paid for this ticket. You know, it's a 5,000 rupee ticket, and you never paid for it. So now in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, there's less people. It's a smaller kind of circle, so people have to, you know, people end up paying. So the PCB official was telling me that, you know, we've never made this much money from gate attendance as we did in Pakistan. I was like, well, there's a reason for that, because you give out all your goddamn tickets for free in Pakistan, and now you're actually making it. So they've obviously been hit, you know, their TV contract's been hit, but I would still argue that it's not as bad as a lot of people, including Najm Sethi, who's the PCB chairman, who keep saying that, you know, we need money, we need money, we need money. They're okay. Pakistan financially, they're not as big as India and the other boards, obviously, but they're okay for the next 3 or 4 years. After that, they might struggle. But I think, you know, if they start playing India again, and if they play them in the UAE, that is going to be a huge amount of money for them. You know, that in TV deal alone, that could get them close to $200 million for the next 5-6 years. You know, so they've actually handled it well, as well as they could, given, you know, the impact. But I'm just talking about the economic impact. You know, the impact of not playing in Pakistan for the players and stuff. It's taken a terrible toll on them. You know.
Has it?
Well, you know, I mean, I think at the start, the first 2-3 years or so, they were pretty happy because they were outside of Pakistan and it was an experience. They were traveling along. But if you speak to them now, you know, guys like Misbah ul Haq, Mohammad Hafiz, they're just like, you know, it becomes really bad. It's not that there isn't a crowd in Abu Dhabi or Dubai. It's just the fact that you're constantly away from home and you're playing these home matches. If you play in Faisalabad, if an Ajmal plays in Faisalabad in front of his home ground, just imagine the crowd that he would have there, you know, at his beck and call when he's bowling. And to not have those comforts around you as you play, I think it just takes a huge mental toll on these guys. And some of them are going to go through their entire career, sadly, I think, without, you know, Ajmal has played, but someone like Azhar Ali, who's a wonderful batsman, number 3, I don't think he's played in Pakistan ever in his entire career, an international match, and he might not, you know. We're looking at the prospect of maybe people going through, I don't know, half a life, maybe an entire life not watching a match at a stadium in Pakistan ever. So yeah, it's terrible, but, you know, what can you do? It's... I think there's some PCB officials who also are not sure whether they should have cricket back in Pakistan right now because they're not sure they can guarantee, you know, safety of anyone who comes in. Some of them have been told specifically by security officials that it's not safe right now. Cricket is still a target, and the fact that cricket did become a target, I think, perversely confirmed just how much a part of the national fabric of Pakistan it was. It was surprising if you think back to it now, and you think all these militants want to attack symbols of Pakistan or things that are so Pakistani, so intrinsically Pakistani. It's a surprise that it took them so long to actually attack a cricket team that was there.
What is going on with the PCB?
I don't know. I was looking today. I think it's Sunday today, so I'm trying to work out who the chairman is today because they've changed about 7 times in the last week. It's a mess. The PCB is a mess, but it's like so many things in Pakistan, it's a working mess.
Okay.
And they kind of work their way through the administrative troubles somehow. I think it's because the basic product that they have, which is the Pakistani cricket team, still sells. People still want to play them generally. PCB, I think the thing about the Pakistan Cricket Board is I think even after all these years, after 50, 60 years, they haven't worked out whether they're a public institution body with the spirit of a private company, or whether they're supposed to be a private body with the spirit of a public institution. I think they still have to kind of work that out, because they're not. A lot of people might think, when they're criticizing the PCB, that they're completely politicized and that they're run on the whims of government. They're not really. The only link, and it is the strongest link, with the government of the day is that the prime minister or the president chooses the chairman. And I know that's like a pretty big and pretty definitive political link, but underneath that, the president doesn't really care. Neither does the prime minister. They don't really care what's going on in the PCB underneath the guy they've picked. And so they're left to run pretty much by themselves. And you've got some good officials there. You've got some good hardworking guys there. You've got some real losers and jokers there as well, who don't know what they're doing. And they're only there because, the chairman sort of wants them in there. And like many things, it kind of works its way through. Just like a PIA would. PIA is still going, and nobody knows how that, nobody knows how that institution is still alive. Yeah. And the PCB is still going, and nobody knows how that institution is still alive. But it is, and they'll come into big money again, and they'll keep finding great cricketers because there are great cricketers out there, and they'll stay alive.
Well, since we've talked about big money, to what extent do you take the line that corruption within the game is really within the Pakistan team is completely rampant and ruining the team and ruining the side?
Oof. I don't know if it's rampant. And the time that the spot fixing scandal happened here, 2010, with Amir and Asif, I think there was a real rush for, and even sometimes I was guilty of it, to kind of see it as a national trait or some kind of national characteristic or blemish on the country. And it wasn't really, it was 3 guys who, and maybe there were more, who messed up, who fell prey to bad things. They had their own pressures. I mean, I'll tell you, one of them, I'm not going to name, but one of them had played in the IPL and had bought a house in Pakistan on the money that he thought he was going to get from the IPL. That money got delayed because India-Pakistan transactions are never easy. It takes time and things happened. And I think in the end, maybe he didn't get all the money that he was supposed to. But this happened in 2009, and the spot fixing scandal happened in 2010. And you kind of put 2 and 2 together and maybe get 4.5, and you think, he might have been keen for some money, and Pakistani cricketers, they don't get paid well compared to the rest of the world, but they get paid damn well for Pakistan. I would put them in the top 5% of earners in the country if you're making 500,000 rupees a month without, your other endorsements and all. Yeah. But you can kind of see the pressures that were on these guys, and so, they did what they did. I don't think it was a team-wise thing. I don't even think you can draw too many conclusions from it, other than, the fact that, some people will do it, some people won't. It's at some level, it's down to greed as well. In Amir's case, although I'm not convinced by the theory, but in Amir's case, I think it could have been down to his naivety. And he was young, and he felt the pressure of being in the team, and he thought, here's the captain, he's telling me something, I should do it. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I don't completely buy it, but there were a lot of different things. When man makes an error or commits a crime, it's not one thing that you can kind of say. It's 100 million things. And now, as we're seeing, with just what's happened in New Zealand recently with the players there, and the IPL last year. The IPL, that is the biggest example. That this is the richest league in the world, and the players are getting paid like money they've never been paid before, especially Indian cricketers. Yet you still have some guys who will make $30,000 more if they bowl a no ball, or if they put a towel at an appropriate angle on their pajamas and run in like Srishant did. And ultimately, you just kind of go back to, it's greed, it's what else, it's many other things, it's complicated, but it happens pretty much everywhere. And I think, maybe I was guilty of it at the time as well, but I don't think it's something that is just like it's a Pakistani trait or even a Pakistani team trait. It kind of happens. It's just the way the game is. It's so open to that kind of, who on earth is ever going to know that no ball you bowled in the 13th over was a fixed one? Because there's like a million different events that can happen in any match, in a cricket match, that is just so susceptible to this kind of corruption that you can just get away with it. Who knows? You hear stories as a journalist. You hear stories of matches gone where the toss has been fixed, where the first ball of a match was supposed to be wide, and you just never know, because you can't until someone like the News of the World comes along and records these guys.
I'm going to open up to the audience in just a minute, but I have one question which I'm particularly interested in, which is, what is the state of women's cricket in Pakistan these days?
It's not as bad as you might think from the outside. Actually, women's cricket has got a pretty old history in Pakistan. There was organized women's cricket taking place under the aegis of the BCCP, as it was then, the Pakistan Board, as far back as 1977, where they used to wear shalwar kameez and play at that time. Then there was a particularly kind of tricky period where Shaiza Khan and her sister came in, and they kind of took control of the board, but they were still playing, and they had a real, they were really good cricketers. Those two girls, those two sisters, brought out a real bunch of talent, women's cricket talent in Pakistan. And now, I think it was in 2003 that the PCB finally took over the women's wing. So they've now got a women's cricket wing. And I think 7 out of the squad of 15 are actually on central contracts. So, it's pretty much what they're doing full time. Yeah. And all of them have got like a contract with a department such as a bank or an airline, where they have a job, and it allows them to play cricket full time. So it's kind of there, I don't know how deeply it's gone in yet into the grassroots, but they've got a little bubble of maybe, I would say, 45 to 60 good players who can play sort of national cricket over the next 10 years. How far deep they go into getting new talent out is something I fear that's beyond the PCB's hands, basically. It's that kind of question on how much women can do in Pakistan, how much, I think it's something that maybe Malala can control more than the PCB can, unfortunately, in that. But I think, as of now, they've done pretty well, and they will probably do pretty well, and better than a lot of people expect for the next 10 years or so.
Thank you, Usman.